Something that's been on my mind for some time.
Tell me.
As you know, I have a lot of sales calls. I talk to a lot of people,
A lot of sales.
a lot of people. And most people that I speak with have had some bad experience with a web designer in the past.
Why do you think that is?
I'll tell you why I think that is, Mike. I think it's primarily because, first and foremost, I've said it a million times, here's a million and one. This is an unlicensed, unregulated Wild West where anybody can say that they're a designer, developer, etc. You heard me say that countless times. I think there's a problem with creatives.
What's that?
People that are creative.
What's the problem?
The problem is that there's a issue with adherence to deadlines that seems to be a consistent issue across the board.
Would you say that's more from freelancers or from companies?
Given the prevalence of freelancers in this industry, I would guess freelancers. I can't speak to experiences that clients are having with bigger companies. Most, I don't think, have had that kind of experience. However, I've heard horror stories, as you know, of companies of all size.
I'll tell you from my experience, there's been a lot of creative agencies that run into very similar problems with delivering the scope of work on time.
You mean bigger creative agencies?
Bigger ones, like massive creative development projects.
So it's not just the
websites,
freelancer, it's,
content, all of it.
wow.
I think. I think it's an industry issue as a whole. I don't think it's one specific segment.
How does one fix it? I mean, should we just accept, or should a client just accept it if we say it's going to be 8 weeks and it turns into 8 months, that that's somehow acceptable? Or that there's a feeling of like, the client is like, hey, come on, what's going on? And there's almost like a negative feeling from that vendor, but it's their fault, right?
You know, I think that many of the clients do not know what to ask. They don't know how, because you don't know the questions to ask. You don't know how you can hold someone accountable to how long something should take, or pacing, or deadlines. And I think that's where the disconnect comes.
All right, Mike. So what are some questions that a person or company that's looking for design/development work, what kind of questions should be asked to ensure that there isn't a misalignment of their plans?
I think you touched on the keyword alignment. I think if there's a process in place and they know what the process of success should look like, how you're going to get there, then you can kind of walk yourself backwards to get to the start. If you know what you're getting or what you need, maybe you can't scope out exactly how much time something's going to, take, how long design's going to take. But if you know the process, you know you're not waiting for a finished product that just isn't there yet.
I'll tell you, I've learned as I've become older, more seasoned in my role, that I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And when I say I mean we collectively as Sage, the organization, not just Alex here. And I like to take phased approaches with clients. I'll give you an example. I have a client right now, has a site. I've done work for him before. He's like, Alex, just literally, this is the same brand, just different concept. Go to Figma, execute in the same way you did. It was great the first time around. I said, wonderful. Here's the problem. The first time around, there was some scope creep issues that came up, and I don't want to replicate it. How do we not do that again? So I'm speaking to him, and he's got 1,500 pages on a site now, using some plugin to duplicate location pages based on some parameters and shortcodes, et cetera, that I don't want to misquote, right? The execution of. Whether I do that part, whether he does that part, that's another story. But I said, hey, look, your site is 15 or maximum 20 page templates that need to be designed and coded in Elementor. Do you agree with me? He said, yes. I said, great. So I'm going to quote that specifically. And all this other work, utilizing this plugin and making 1,000 pages for where your locations are and all this stuff, we're going to do that on an hourly basis to make sure that we're protecting the time of Sage and the resources that we have here, and also making sure that we can give the right quality of work. Because I'll tell you what happens. So I'm talking to freelancers here. I'm talking to creatives. You take something on board because you're excited about it and you have a creative energy that you want to go into the world with, right? I know creative people. I know the kind of attitude. And I love and respect that. The problem is once you're months deep into the project and the client has expectations that either you didn't expect were going to take this long or whatever the case was, there's some resentments that can be harbored, right? You agree with me?
Sure.
And it's not good for both parties, right?
No, but I think scope creep is naturally something that occurs. It's just making sure you minimize that as much as possible from both sides.
Agreed.
Even if it's starting with setting milestones for we're going to start, we want 15 pages, but let's start with getting 5 up and live. That's something you can measure. Do you need all 10 pages do you need 10 pages to start? Can you get by with 5? Do you need 15?
Yeah. Well, do you like what I said about the 15 example and the 1,000 other can be done on an hourly engagement or by
Right.
your internal team? I don't want to, again, how could I possibly quote that static price, one price for something like that when I have no concept of the amount of time that it's going to take? Does it take an hour? Does it take 50 hours? How would I know? I don't know without going into it, right? So I have to protect myself and protect the organization. And I think that when I say protect, it's not like it's good for both parties. We both got to know what we're getting into. And if it's not aligned, better not take it at all than to get into something and it be a nightmare catastrophe that never ends. Again, my message to creatives is I appreciate the energy. I appreciate all of that kind of creativity that goes into let's say, first steps of a project, but make sure that you give accurate timelines and protect yourself from scope creep as much as possible and put some reasonable expectations in place that you can remove yourself from a scenario and still feel good that you've done good work, right?
You said something about that strategy. I think that's actually very appropriate to split that up because it also makes the client evaluate how much do I actually need 1,000 pages? Do they really need 1,000
And
pages?
are you willing to pay for the time to do it
Well,
right, is
that's
what
the
you're
point.
saying, yeah.
Do they need it? If they don't need it,
Well, if it's free, of course they need it. Why not? Go for it. Do it. Or you know what I'm saying? Or
sure. I
if it's
mean,
misquoted and it's my responsibility now to do something that I shouldn't have done, taken on, it's a different feeling than no, oh no, okay, we're going to do this on an hourly basis at an agency
that's
rate,
right.
and we're happy to do it for you as long as you understand it's going to take X amount of time and does this make sense for the business?
I agree.
Good. What else should we be saying to freelancers and or project managers or companies that are looking to hire? What are some other things like, hey, look out for this? I keep seeing this.
I think a lot of creatives start with the big picture, you know, some beautiful designs, the movements, the functionality. But I think if you start with truly from both sides, the development organization as well as from the client perspective, really understanding what do you need? Not the nice to haves, not
Yeah.
the maybes, but what do you actually
What do you
need?
actually need and what's it going to
Why do
take
you
to,
need
why do
it?
you, the why? Yeah.
If you start with those questions, it's a lot easier to kind of figure out how to build around it.
Yeah.
And then you're not just building to build.
Building to build.
And that's where
Yeah.
the problem I think really comes in. You're building, you'll start changing the homepage after you've already designed the homepage and some of the other pages. But now the homepage is maybe it's significantly nicer or it doesn't match the rest of the site.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you're starting to update the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds familiar. Yeah.
I'll tell you another problem that it's not necessarily on the creatives as much, but it could, is when you have so many people involved with decision making and there's not one central person that can be the spokesperson specifically for a client or an
Yep.
organization, and you're getting input 5 different
Yep.
times, and the creative elements just keep changing and
Yep.
changing and
We
changing.
just launched a site. The lady we've been working with the entire project was great, but
Site
her
goes live.
boss has other expectations and realizes it post launch of the website. Now, again, we understand things come up. We'll work. We'll do. We'll help. Don't. That's not what I'm saying here. But you're right. It's who's in charge of this thing. Is there 5 people involved? Is there not? Has everybody signed off?
Getting that stakeholder sign off, I think, is crucial.
Another point comes to my mind too is, do you really have a grasp of every step associated with what your intent to do is? You want to do something. Let's just say I'm coming back to the creatives and like you have this energy and this fire to do something great. Do you fully comprehend what it takes from a design and development standpoint to execute the vision? And does it make sense to do it? And again, are you willing to pay for it? Do you see the value in it, right? So I think sometimes crucial steps of the process are skipped or misunderstood by either side. I think making sure we fully comprehend that in advance is also critical. You agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah. I've seen that many times. It's like, hey, this following thing would be really awesome. Like, do you understand that that's throwing a number? A week's of work in order to do this? Like, are we really, does this matter or do we just move on and not worry about this?
I think functionality also has that same sort of impact where you start adding something on, but how does that one function connect with the other parts, other systems,
Mm.
CRMs, forms, social platforms? and being able to tie it together if it's not initially thought of.
Yeah. Any final words?
In many ways, you don't know what you don't know on both sides,
So
but
true.
trying to think of what success looks like or what the final picture should look like. And I'm not saying from a design perspective, but how is, if it's from a client, what does success look like? Or if it's from the agency standpoint, what needs to be planned out? And if you don't have a process to plan the process out, of course you're going to run into scope creep. There's going to be things you don't think of. They forgot to add the blog or the contact page, or they need X, Y, and Z added to the site. And that's going to start adding on time and time and time. Meanwhile, from agency's perspective, if they don't plan, there's going to be more projects in the pipeline and start delaying.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's projects that don't get started on time for whatever reason I've seen. And I think it really just comes down to planning.
Planning. Yeah. So ask the right questions, know what to ask, have an idea of the scope, understand what it is you're requesting, understand what it is you're selling, right, from the other side.
Hmm.
And I love that. I love that. Ask the right questions.
Ask the right question.
And look, I've said this before. Sage has done. I don't want to exaggerate, but hundreds, 1,000 projects since its inception. I don't know how many. We're not learning on your account in the sense of, look, there's always room for growth. There's always learning opportunities. That's not what I'm saying. But we're not figuring something out for the first time on your dime and hoping that it goes well.
Hmm.
We have the right team, processes in place to ensure we're doing the right type of work. And I think that there's tremendous value in that from my view.
I share the view.
I hope so.
A little biased.
We are biased. Thank you for the time.